Hello, Twitch. Good morning. Yeah, so when I left off yesterday, I was working in my scene manager system, which is the name of my entity component system, and I had just integrated YAML CPP, YAML Serialization library, which is important for the next functions that I'm going to be setting up, which is the serialization functions. So for saving and loading a scene. I'm not really sure how far I want to go down that rabbit hole right now because those functions aren't super useful until I can actually construct scenes in an editor, and I haven't made an editor for Enterprise yet. That might be sooner on my list than I thought, but I at least want to do the scene reading function. That way I can read scene files, and I can start to construct systems that will read scene files to set up their entities. So heading back to scenemanager.h, where I've got part of the API defined already, I am gonna go ahead and uncomment out the details that I had commented out before. So that would be here. Control KU. All right, now I've got the register component type function, which already takes the name of the component type. I'm still leaving out this adjacent scenes boolean, which has to do with scene streaming, which is something that's like way down the road. Got add component function, delete component function, query, and get component data function. The text serialize and text deserialize are what's important now. I think actually now that I'm looking at it, I do want to leave this commented out. Okay, there we go. Because binary serialization, while it's not very difficult, it requires that I set up an API for binary writing, and that's something that I haven't done quite yet. But we do have the YAML API now, and so we can start doing YAML serialization, which, as you can see here, is actually kind of important for the callbacks. So for text serialize function, this is a pointer to a function that can serialize output. And so what we have to provide from the scene manager side is this YAML emitter and the list of the entities that we want to serialize components for. And then whatever system integrates with scene manager can just use the YAML emitter with a left bit shift character to send out data. And then in the deserialize function, we have I think it's YAML node is the correct one. I'll have to double check. I've never used this library before, but you would use the YAML input object to pull that data out. So yeah, and I haven't really used the YAML library before either, so it's kind of new to me. So we'll probably have some stumbling blocks as we get this integrated. But anyway, yeah, I extended the declaration to include those two pointer functions. Let's go back to the definition. Here, and I want to add those two back into it. There we go. Now we got the text serialize function and the text deserialize function. And I had a to-do note left from last time to make sure that the name is unique. Oh yeah, because I wasn't actually checking whether the name was unique. So I guess what I'll do when I'm adding these functions to the function list, it's actually done in the form of a hash map, a SDD map. So what I could do is I could just actually say cpp assert, use my assert macro to confirm that ACFS, just any one of them, has a value with the key, the name. If one has it, then all of them have it. Oh, sorry, I need to convert it. I need to do the opposite. I need to make sure that that equals 0. I know I could put a little exclamation point, but because count technically returns a counting value, I just prefer for readability to do equals 0, because it's not returning a bool, it's returning an integer that, you know, technically in another on another container might be 0 through however many instead of 0 through 1. Anyway, there we go. I can get rid of that to do. And now I need to push back the text serialize function and text deserialize function. I don't think I have this set up yet, so I'll have to create those containers. Text serialize function, and then text deserialize functions. Name equals text deserialize function. All right, and then set to the top where I've got these guys, and I'll do text serialize function, and then text deserialize function. There we go. And now those are available to add things to here. And that's actually as simple as it gets for the register component type. I basically just need to push back the pointers, and then we can use those pointers for the other function calls. So heading back to the library, I do need to include the YAML header. How big is YAML CBP? It kind of seems like, yeah, it's kind of got a lot going on in it. I'm wondering if I should add that to the precompiled header, or if I should add it to include quite a lot in the headers. Yeah, I think I don't often do this with library code, but I think I'm going to add this to the precompiled header. pbpch.h. Here we go. So this is the enterprise library's precompiled header. I use it to largely for standard library includes that I use everywhere. If you're not familiar with the precompiled header, basically it's just a header that you tell the your compiler is going to be used everywhere, and it can like compile it into intermediate bytecode, and it just like hangs onto that until the file changes. So that way, if you're not making changes to a whole bunch of includes, then those includes don't have to be like recompiled. And I'm a little vague on how that works, because you know, you normally you don't compile headers directly, you just compile the CPP file that contains the header, but it can speed up build times a little bit. So in this case, I think yes, I will do include, that would be YAML CPP, YAML.h, I think is what you use for everything. And now I'll hit Control S and go back to Scene Manager, where those warnings for the YAML emitter have gone. But I guess YAML node is not the, oh, I didn't have two, I didn't have two colon signs in there. Okay. Now I got to review real quick the YAML CPP, because I'm not actually 100% clear on how it works. I know that you use bit shift left, and there's a couple of constants that you can use. And I know that you use YAML emitter for outputting data. But if you're bringing data in, YAML load represented equals, so I guess you get the node from calling load and then providing it a key. I'm assuming that's a complex key, because you can use values or even sequences as keys. I think that's what that is there. Collection node sequences maps act like STL. Building nodes. Okay, you build node from scratch. Node key equals value is now a map node. Okay, back. So actually, now that I'm looking at it, I might want to use a node for both instead of a YAML emitter, because the point of the serialize function is that the scene manager system manages where in the scene file the component data goes. So I'm currently thinking that like a key for component data will be all that it does. A key for component data, and then for the component name, which is provided as a parameter to the registration function. And then this section is all that the callback deals with, but it's able to do whatever it wants in this section. So it doesn't have to use a sequence like I did here. But the only data that is required to keep is the entity associated with each ID. And while I'm not actually going to implement a requirement within the callbacks function or the registration function to somehow force a person to include the entity, they're going to practically have to keep it. Because one of the functions that they have to deal with is the query component function, which is that they have to know the entity IDs for the components that they manage. So I'm just counting on each system to meet that requirement, and they can format the entity data however they prefer. Let me press and pour myself some coffee here real quick. Okay, so where will these be used? I've got new entity just creates an entity. Purge spawn entities, purge scene entities. Those are going to implement later. And then serialize entities. I think this is where I'll start. There's actually going to separately be a serialize for the scene, I believe. So when the editor goes to serialize a scene file, it's actually going to do a little bit more than just run serialize entities, because it's got to do stuff like list the required systems, the required build, and so on and so forth. The serialize entities text is its only purpose is to save data about specific entities, which is useful in the case of like if you want to save part of the world state as part of your player's save file. So for example, if you're playing a game like in Skyrim, when you're saving and restoring your save, you're not just saving like quest progress or whatever. You're also saving the player's exact position and orientation in the world, what they've got equipped, all of the entities like debris and characters and corpses and the locations of all the animals, things that would have affected you in the scene. So that's how you get, when you save a game and you return, you're like in the middle of a bear fight and you restore a save file in the middle of the bear fight. The bear is still attacking you. That's handled because they serialize the state of the bear. So I'm gonna start here, and I'm not gonna do the binary version quite yet because I don't have the API set up for it. But this is serialize entities text, and this is where we invoke the callbacks. So for starters, I need to get a YAML file open. Do I need, oh, that's a good point. Because I don't have a path being provided here. I think I do need to provide a path to a file to serialize to. I'm on the fence about that, because what if you wanted to serialize the entities as part of a larger file? So one approach that I could do is I could just simply add another parameter to this function and say std string path, and then say, okay, you provide the name of the file where you want to serialize to. And then it would just, within this function, open up that file, output the data there, and then close the file. But if we're talking about wanting to make this data part of a larger file, then I'm going to need to do that a little differently. I think for now what I'll do is I'll just do the path to simplify things. And then in the future, if I need a version of this that allows you to just simply insert within the stream of another file, I'll either do a text reader, because I've got a text file API built into Enterprise already, and then you just the function does all the YAML stuff, but pushes it into the text file, or something like that. But for now, this is what we'll do. This means I gotta go back to here, do std string path, and Enterprise uses a virtual file path system that's not great, because it's a little wordy right now. I'll make it less wordy as we go. Let me include the file system though. Include file.h, and where was I? Oh, I was there we go. So the first thing I gotta do is I gotta actually open up a YAML file, I believe. I'm going back to this guy, how to emit YAML. So I create a output emitter, and that becomes the repository for the YAML. All right, so I need YAML emitter out YAML, and then you know what? I don't think that this actually outputs to a file. I don't think that's part of the API. So the YAML emitter will contain the data, and then I have to actually tell it to output to a file. So I've actually got to dump the data to a file myself. Yeah, that sounds right. Okay. First though, I gotta go ahead and go through and tell all of the files to output to this emitter. So I'm gonna go through each callback. So that would be for be a text file, or no, text serialize functions. That's right. I think that's just a all right, it's accessed by key, so it returns a pair with the key. And okay, so let me go ahead and just make that explicit. Std pair of a hash name. The hash name is the key, and the value was the text serialize function. Right? Oh, but I'm doing it by reference. Right, and I can't I do it by reference? I thought I just did it by reference with auto, didn't I? Std conditional. Oh, it's wrapped around a it's a const hash name, I guess. I don't know if that makes a difference. I guess it does. Or maybe it worked fine from the get-go and I just didn't wait long enough for IntelliSense to figure it out. All right, yeah, I think it sounds like it's probably fine. So coming back to here, so I've got, or you know what? I'm gonna do this a little differently. I'm gonna use std. I'm gonna use C++ structured bindings, which is really helpful in a situation like this. I'm gonna do auto. I don't believe it would be component name and callback. So what this is going to do is, because of the container that I'm getting back as a pair, you can use structured bindings to automatically take the first and the second element and put them into their own variables. So now instead of using the pair.first or pair.second, I just have component name and callback that I can directly use, which makes it a little bit more readable. So I've got the component name. I'm referring to a mock-up I've made of a scene file that I'm going to be approximating when I do this API. So actually what I've got to do is I've got to output the entity stuff and then output the component stuff. And before I output the component stuff, I got to put it into a key for components. So I'll do out YAML and then YAML key, and then the key is going to be components, and then YAML value, and then from here on, all the stuff that goes on in this block will be nested underneath components. And then I can say out YAML, out YAML, end value? I'm a little vague on that. Let me check it out. Okay, so actually I have to do begin map and then end map. Okay, and that's how you define where the end is. So everything after begin, everything after key until value is the key, and everything after value until end map is the value. I think I'm probably skipping a step here, but we'll come back to that. End map, and then this will be okay. And I'm not sure if I'm missing something yet. So I think what I'm going to do is actually, before I even get the callbacks finished, I want to check that I want to check that this is working the way I think it will. So I would say I'm just going to type up the YAML code that would produce a section that looks like this. I would say Sprite, so out YAML begin sequence. Wait, no, actually it would just be YAML key, and then Sprite, and then YAML begin sequence. And then I would do another set of key value pairs. YAML. I'll pick this up a little bit. And then I don't actually know if I'm allowed to do straight integers out, or if I have to do everything to a string. I think every value has to be outputted as a string. Oh no, here. Begin sequence 22, 23. To deviate from standard formatting, you can use manipulators. So I actually have to use something like flow in order to do that. Okay. The reason why I'm having to look up this is because I believe begin sequence and end sequence, if I go to take a look at it. Oh no, it's an enum, so it's a type safe enum. So does that mean that I can output 26 without screwing up? Yeah, I guess so. I'm just gonna make this into the ID 26 just to be sure. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, because it can do. It must be able to handle this type separately. Yeah, so we can just output numbers. Oh, that's great. But I'm not going to change the standard formatting. There's a handful of different ways that you can do sequences. I've mixed them up here a little bit. This is probably how I'll want to do sequences for the most part with components, because this allows you to easily break up stuff per line. And the more data that you break up per line, the easier it is for merging files later, because it's version control like Git will track the differences between files by line number, so it's easier for it to insert a new line into code than it is to change a middle section. That's not exactly accurate, but it's easier to work with other people if you're not working on the same lines of code in the file. So I want to break it over the course of several lines. So yeah, actually that should be fine. Let's just go back to this and keep going. But I need to do YAML value first. There we go. And then I'll do this a couple more times. It doesn't actually matter what I put here. I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm understanding the API correctly before I spend all this time working on it. I'll just dig a file name and then our YAML in sequence. Cool. And then so that we've got a map going for all the components. I've got a key under which there's a sequence. Oh, but I need to do YAML value here. Okay, so I've got the key, the value of which is the sequence entity texture with its key values, and then I've finished the sequence. And now I can finish the map. the sake of testing this, I'm going to just send it out to the console. Out YAML.cstring. Cool. And then for the sake of testing it, I'm just going to call it at the. I've got a simple dev state going on right now, which right now only makes a 3D cube of Madeline on all the faces. I'm going to just call it here. So we need scene manager. And we're going to do text serialize function. Oh wait, that's a serialize entities text, and then it doesn't matter what we put for these. Cool. All right, let's see what the console outputs. That's taking a while to compile. Oh, you know what it is? I put it in the precompiled header and I didn't compile after that. So it's recompiling the precompiled header and then recompiling all the units that use it. So yeah, this is going to be a one-time lengthy build, but then the rest of them should go faster. Any minute now. Whoopsie, I should have just built it as soon as I made the change to the precompiled header. Okay, there we go. Got the window up, and okay. Actually, yeah, that looks like it's working. Though there's a question mark there. So it looks like when I added the sprite value, it was treated like, I'm not really clear. The question mark in YAML means that you've got a complex key, I believe. So it's treating these like a key, and it's treating sprite like it's a value and it's not a subkey. So I'm forgetting something here in the API. Let's go back to the YAML doc. So you've got key, and then when you do the value, so the key was components, and then for the value, I put another key. Is that not allowed? Ugh. The API is pretty straightforward looking, but I've never used it before, and this is one of those learning curves. Children value. Yeah, so that you're able to go directly into begin sequence. And I'd assume it's the same for begin map. So you got begin map, you got the keys, components, the value is. Oh, I have to do another begin map. That's what the problem is. So the value of components needs to be a map, and I'm only saying that I've got another key. Okay, so I would say, well, first let me terminate the program. Out YAML, and I'll do YAML begin map. And then I got sprite, and its value is the following sequence. entity texture. I know that's probably not great C++ discipline, but I'm actually just tabbing that in to emphasize that it's part of the sequence. The entity texture, and then the end sequence. And then I do out YAML and map, and then that'll be the end of the sprite. Section, right? I think I've got that right. Okay. Cool. And then the outer map ends around components. All right. And heading back to here, we got components, and then a sub key under that is sprite, and then we got the other details, except for these are, the sequence is not a sequence of containers, it's a sequence of just the data I'm outputting. So there's a problem there again. All right, let's take a closer look at what I just did. So I've got a map of components. The value is a map where sprite is the first key, and the value is a sequence. Oh, and the sequence is, it's a sequence of maps. That's what it is. Man, this is getting more and more complicated the more I look at it. Begin map. So I have to begin the sequence, then I have to begin a map, and then I have to end the map here. Oh my god. End map. All right. That should be putting things correctly. Okay, ND texture. Yeah, so that appears to be correct. And just to make things really a little bit more clear, I'm going to do this in the trace. I'm going to put a new line in front of the first line to show them following each other. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that alignment was correct. So components, then it tabs in and does sprite, and then it tabs in and does entity and texture, which is perfect. That's the format that I was going for. All right, so I think I've got a decent grasp of how this works now. Let's head back into Studio and take another sip of coffee. In map key. All right, so before we call the components, I have to do this guy, and then for every, so I do components, and then I do begin map. Okay. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down below, so that way when I go to test out this function, I can see it on the console. I'll worry about dumping it to a file after I've got the formatting correct. Out YAML, begin map, keys components, and then it uses a map as its value, and then for every component name, I will do out YAML, and then hash names are technically integers, but I've got a reconverter function, hash name to string, and so I'll take the component name, output it as a string. Oh, but I need to do it as a value. YAML, or as a key, sorry, key. And then YAML value, and at this point, for at this point, the callback will be past the YAML, so that would be callback. I'll pass it out YAML. It's by reference, so I don't need to do a address of operator. And then the list of entities that I'm going to be serializing, which while it's empty right now, I actually do have it as parameter, so I can just kind of pass it. Why is this const? Is that a problem? From initializer list callback. I think this might be an issue with the prototype of the callback. Oh yeah, I have it taking an initializer list here, and that's actually not correct. That's not something that can be done dynamically. So I actually do need this to be an std vector probably. And I don't want to modify it, so I'll say const reference. I mean, it's probably not a lot of data to do the list of entities, but I might as well not reconstruct it everywhere, or not copy it everywhere. So const vector by address, const vector by address. Yeah, that's what I need. So I can pass out the entities. And at this point, we're inside of a value node. And actually, I'm a little worried right now because I think it might be really easy to screw this up. At this point, we're inside of the value of the value underneath the component name. If you were to just output a straight sequence, let me go back to the mockup. If you were to output just a straight sequence, then it would actually be fine. If you were to output just a single value, that would also be fine. Would it also be fine to just output a bunch of values in a row? I don't actually know what happens when you do that. I want to minimize the potential ways that a developer can screw up a serialization function. It kind of looks like all working examples that they have in the tutorial where there's back-to-back values occurs within a begin and an end sequence. So I guess this will just be a thing that devs will need to watch out for, and I don't really like putting anything on them, but when the callback is being written, the dev is going to need to realize that they're inside of a value node and then not just output values without making a sequence, which, you know, that's part of how YAML works, so I think that should be fine. The potential problem there, though, is that if they do start outputting stuff without making a sequence container themselves, then they can break the outer YAML potentially. So I might just want to wrap the callback with a sequence, begin and end sequence myself. But then it would be a little bit more confusing to write the callback. So never mind, I'm just going to leave it as it is. They can remember to begin and end the sequence. And after this is done, value, then I need to do out YAML. Do I need to do out YAML anything? So I've got the key, I've got the value. No, I don't, because after that's done, we'll just move on to the next component and then do its key and value pair. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I wonder if I want to. Nah, it's not worth it. I was thinking maybe I should do a comment above each for each system, but I'm not even storing the names of the systems that register, so that's okay. And then we'll end the map for components here. So I think that's all the component callback and serialization in a nutshell. I think that's everything. And then above this, I'll do it quick to do for later today. This is where I would serialize the entity stuff. Things like the tags and the callback, or sorry, the tags and the transform and the parent information if I have any. And actually, above that, well, I'm not doing this. This is not for a scene file. This is just for serializing the entities specifically. So I'm going to skip that stuff. Though, I guess we can just skip this whole YAML bit. I don't know whether or not the YAML header is required at all for importing data from a file. But this is not necessarily going to be from a straight YAML file. All I know is that it's going to be from a text file. So a developer might be serializing other arbitrary data. And right now, the form of this function doesn't allow that, but I'm assuming that this algorithm will be used differently once I've gotten farther along with my file system. So I think that's it. For the moment, then, I guess I should set up the deserialize. Now I'm gonna just leave serialization where it is right now, and I'm going to make a subsystem, make a system for the scene manager and test out that call. I'm gonna go ahead and do that here. I'll need. Am I in show all files? No, I'm not. Every time I rebuild my solution, I have to come back in and click show all files. I don't really like using the solution organizer because I like to actually have my stuff go in the folder where I tell it to. But going into the source, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this systems, and I'm going to add a header, and it's going to be test scene sys1. Cool. And then include enterprise.h. And then I think enterprise.h already has has scene manager in it already. So I can just say using scene manager. Or scene manager. Then I'll do scene manager. I guess it doesn't have to be a class per se, but it probably should be just to keep things organized. Yeah. Okay. And I'll do. I need a void init. And I'll clean up. And then I'll implement the rest in the CPP file. Can I just create one from here? Synthesis1.cpp. Yes. Okay. Well, it created a file, but it didn't actually implement it, so I'll just do that myself. Test synthesis1. I'm actually not sure that I'm going to be using cleanup for anything, but I'll leave it now. And then I just got to implement it. So I go back to sandbox.cpp, which has actually got the game.init function, which is the entry point. And then prior to pushing the test state, I'm going to call scene manager, and I'm going to do register accepted redirect. Oh wait, what am I doing? I just need to do systems testing system, and I'll do test sys1 init. Oh, and you know what? Now that I'm saying that, I forgot to make this static. Yeah, there we go. And now I got init being called, and init is going to be responsible for setting its stuff up in scene manager. So scene manager, register component type. I'll do a test component for the component name, and now I've got to get all the callbacks I need. Which, you know, it's I haven't implemented most of them quite yet. So what I'll do instead is I'll just pass no pointer for the functions for the ones I don't have yet. I'll get add component function, delete component function, create component function, get component data. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the one I want, and then another. Okay, so no pointer, no pointer, no pointer, and then no pointer. And then I gotta get a function that matches the text serialize function here. Okay, so that'll be static void and cool. So that's I need to do there we go. So this is a function that matches. I'll pass its address to the register component type, and now I've got a callback registered that'll pass me the YAML out and the list of entities. Now, for the sake of testing, I'm still not passing a list of entities because I haven't constructed a scene properly yet. But let me make sure first that the callback is even working. And once it is, once I know that it is, I'll test out what an example serialization function might look like. So practicing using the YAML library to serialize some component data and see if it plays nicely with. Oh, you know what? It's not going to be invoked. I just realized. It's like, oh no, it was invoked. When did I do that? I registered the component type, but I never. Oh, because I did it in here. Okay, I was thinking in my head that I didn't ever call serialize entities, but I did it in the state, so that's correct. All right. So I got So I'm going to practice the YAML real quick. So by the time this is called, everything should be set up for serializing a component. It'll have already filled out the entities section of the save file, and it'll have already put in components and sprite, and whatever I gave the name, test component. So I will be in this section by the time the callback is sent. So I should be able to just make a sequence container, and that would be it. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Okay, so YAML out, YAML, that would be begin sequence. And then it's going to be a sequence of maps. So it'd be YAML begin map. Well, I should put, I'll put this on its own line. YAML out begin map. And then I will map, I'm just going to use this as an example, the sprite data that I put in my mockup entity. It's a map, so I got to do YAML key. And that'll be entity YAML value, and the value is going to be a number. Just give it a random ID, and then I'm trying to keep this kind of quasi-organized in my head, and it's kind of a jumbled place right now. So I've got the key in, key value, YAML out, key, texture, and that's going to be a string. And then UVs is actually going to be a sub map of that. So let's see how far I can go nesting. I shouldn't have any problems. The YAML CDP is a pretty tried and true library at this point. Oh, thanks for the follow, Feeble Brains. I not really paying too much attention to the chat, so it's and I'm also not advertising the stream like anywhere at all. I'm just kind of doing it for a place to work. So yeah, it's I'm amazed that I'm actually getting followers by doing this. So thank you. Here we go, and I was going to do UVs was the next one. And then YAML value. Except for the difference this time is that the value is going to be yet another map. Begin map. Okay. YAML out. And it's going to be a key again. And the key this time is going to be, I've got x0, x0, y0, and so on. I'm just going to do that. And then I'm just going to duplicate some values. Trying to remember why I got 4 coordinates. Oh yeah, I think on this mock-up I was doing one UV coordinate for each corner, so it's not just a uniform square necessarily for sampling. Yeah, that makes sense. There we go. And then I would do YAML map. And then I can do YAML out. I guess I would do nmap again, because I'm now back at this level. Yeah, so I do YAML nmap. Okay, and then that puts me back to the sequence, right? I've got begin map, broken that map, and now I've broken that map. Yeah, so this puts me back out to the main level. So when I'm actually doing a serialization, this would be contained within a loop, and right, yeah, because I've got the list of entities that I would need. The system manages its own pool of components, and so it would go through and loop for every entity in this list, and then output the data from its component. Okay, yeah, I think I've got that right. And then in cases where a entity has multiple types of the same component, then it would do that, have an inner for loop for those. Okay, I think I've got it right in my head. This is this is a good mock-up example. I don't think I need to do anything else except for end the sequence. YAML out, YAML end sequence. The more I work with it, the more I actually think I enjoy this YAML CPP API. It's really straightforward to use. I was debating in my head whether I actually wanted to directly implement it in the game engine code, or if I wanted to like once remove it and have like a wrapper around it. But I think I prefer just working directly with it. So when a developer is working in the game engine, they'll have to learn how to use the API, but it's so straightforward to use once you know a little bit about it. So that should be it. I'm going to go ahead and test this now. So at this point, it's just going to be calling this one time. And let's see what it came up with. Cool. So the components and the test component name were handled by the scene manager itself. And then this is the stuff that would be game specific. So for my test component, I've got the entity ID, the texture example path, and the UVs, and that lines up almost perfectly with what I've got here. The only difference is that on my mockup, I used the curly braces for the sequence, or for the map, instead of letting it go per line. But if this was actually a working scene file, or a working text file, I probably would want that to be per line, because that makes it just a little bit cleaner for merging scene files. I guess I would want to leave it like that, because even though this function is technically not for saving to a scene file, it's for saving to like game save files. It's very likely that just to reuse the code, I'll just make a call to this function when I'm serializing scene files. So cool. All right, that's working pretty much perfectly. So what I've got now is the ability to create a system that can plug into the scene manager, and the scene manager will automatically invoke my serialization function when it goes to serialize the entities. What's missing is the actual pool of entities, so and the load function of the scene. Actually, there's a lot more missing than just those things, but just getting this far to have a workable format that's extensible, so that a game developer can add whatever arbitrary component types they want to the simulation easily, and then have it easily saved to a save file. That's a pretty big step for me. I've never made an engine before, and so it's every little bit helps. All right, so I know that that's working now. I know that this is a reasonable way to do serialization callbacks. Let's head back to scene manager. What time is it? It's almost 11. I might want to take a break and take a shower. I kind of just rolled out of bed and in my jam started streaming. I guess the next thing to look at would be to get it to just wrap up on this function and have it serialize out to a file instead of tracing it. I think I'm going to deal with that later. I think for the moment I'm just going to keep working, and then when I do serialization, I'm just going to see the contents first. There's actually a file system in Enterprise where I can go file and do a text file reader. I don't actually have a text file writer yet. I've been adding parts to my file API as I need them, and so far I've only needed to read them. So for example, I use the text file reader to read my input mapper for mapping things like gamepad and keyboard input. And I think I use it for, I do use it for GLSL parsing, but I haven't actually needed to write the file yet, so I'll have to implement that later. If somebody was to want to use YAML, you know what, I think this actually works out great. The YAML library itself doesn't have its own file save mechanism, so it doesn't provide an API for writing to a file. It just allows me to build the text, and then I can say YAML.cstring and get the text, which is great because that means that if a developer wants to use the YAML library to produce their own kinds of files, like their own asset files or their own save files, they can, and they don't have to worry about the virtual file system. It would still be handled by my text file reader and text file writer. And the reason why that's important is because I've got a virtual file system going. So when I go to build, I'll just I'm not trying to make this stream like a place where like I demonstrate the engine, because it's not done yet, and it takes a long time to just go through all the details. But just for the sake of going through my thought process, this is the directory containing my solution. So that's the dev solution. In here is the library project, and this is the game sandbox project that I'm testing with. The way that I have it set up at the moment is that when I'm developing in here, it loads up files from this folder whenever you use the file path content /. I think I'm going to simplify that at some point and just do C/ for content. But there's a handful of others as well. There's content, I think there's a temp, there's I forget all of them. I pretty much only use content so far. But file.h. There's a file path, content, user, machine, save, and temp. So basically, depending on the platform that you're on, we'll get the correct locations for these from the operating system. And then when you're going to open up a text file writer, you provide content / and it'll just automatically find the correct location for the installed content. So on Windows, that's going to be the program files folder, and on Mac, it would be in the application bundle itself. I should reduce that at some point, but I don't remember all the pieces, so it's just on a to-do list. And then just to point out how this works, because this is designed to automatically find the correct path on the operating system. I've actually got, if we go to debugging is it not under debugging? Where's the... I actually have a command line option going. Command line for when you're debugging, that actually changes the path to be wherever you specify. And so, did I? Huh. I don't know. I'm having trouble finding it all of a sudden. Oh, here it is. Oh, no, that's not it. That's include. I'm a little confused now. But the reason why it pulls from this folder instead is because I've actually got a directive in the in the command line options when I go to launch the program for debugging. Do I have to do active or do? I don't know if more experienced programmers are watching and they know what I'm missing. That would be cool. All configurations maybe. Oh, it should show up in here, but I'm just not seeing it because command arguments is supposed to be passing. Huh. I must be overlooking something, but I know that it wouldn't be working. It wouldn't be loading up anything correctly right now if that wasn't working, because the it is loading up the texture asset for Madeline and the shader file, and I can press escape because it's loading the input mapper. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stream off here. I do have other things besides this I want to do today, but depending on how I'm feeling, I may come back and stream some more work on the engine now that I've got serialization going. Thanks for the couple of folks who popped in, and thanks for giving me a follow, FeebleBrains. I'm not trying to make this like a career or anything like that. I'm just sort of wanted to share my work a little bit. Take it easy. See ya when I see ya.